Hey there! Guess what? It's time for us to learn more about FileMaker Pro. My name is Matt Petrowski, and you're watching this video because we're going to be taking a look at FileMaker's formatting functions. Hang in there and we'll be on my desktop in just a few seconds. All right, so what are we taking a look at today? Well, I'm doing this course sort of ad hoc. I'm just basically covering things on a daily basis, and so I figured we're going through FileMaker's fields and calculations. Let's take a look at the formatting functions and how they might impact your solution when you're developing in FileMaker. If you'd like to follow along, I'm using a copy of FileMaker 16. You can follow along as well. Doesn't matter if you have a newer version or a slightly older version. These functions have existed since FileMaker 12 or FileMaker 11. I don't know. We can always look that up in the documentation. But let's start with a new solution. And as that dialog comes up, for me it's off screen. That's why I'm looking off there. And I'll go to the desktop and I'll just call this formatting functions. So there we go. If you want to follow along, we'll click save that file, and of course FileMaker will come up with our fields. All right, so if we're working with a copy of FileMaker Pro Advanced, then we have access to the data viewer, and that would allow us to look at the formatting functions. But I don't think we'll use that today. I think we'll go ahead and use FileMaker's regular fields. So I'm just going to make a text field and call it text. I'm doing that right there by simply calling it text and clicking create, so that we have a text field. Now the formatting applies to all of FileMaker's field types, and what we're learning in this particular video is we're learning that FileMaker stores two different parts or pieces of data in a field. It stores the actual data itself, but then it also stores style information. Now, to be honest with you, I haven't actually, it's been a while since I've actually gone onto Windows and actually tried to see if this works, what we're going to see here on the Mac. FileMaker supports styling within the fields in terms of the data that's stored along with the style that's stored with the data, but because it doesn't, because IE isn't something that works in tandem with FileMaker, being that FileMaker is developed primarily on a Mac and then it's ported, not ported, but also developed on Windows, you aren't going to have the same type of thing that we're going to see here in this video. So sorry for that belabored explanation right there. But with our field on the layout, let's go and head over and see what I'm talking about here in terms of the field. I'm going to go into layout mode and I'm going to drag this field right here. I'll make it a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on. Go into browse mode. I don't want to save those changes, and that happens every day that I'm shooting these videos because I always create a new preferences file. We'll switch over to Safari. Also, today is Friday while I'm shooting this video, so if you have FileMaker questions, get them ready, and you can put them in the chat if you're watching this live as I'm recording it live. So what I have right here is just a standard web page, and a lot of the times you're copying and pasting things into FileMaker. For example, if I highlight our recent videos and I copy this with Command C, come over to this field and I paste it, that's what I get in the field. I get all of the style data that came with the style settings that came with the data. So the data itself, the pure data, is our recent videos. And what got pasted was the styling information. Now, I don't know if I can do it right now because I did that highlight. It still works. If I do a Command Z or Control Z here on the Macintosh, the styling is actually removed. Now, if you're on Windows, you're going to have to try with IE or try with Chrome. My guess is that styling is not copied as part of the clipboard unless FileMaker's actually implemented that. It may be the case, and I'm sorry, I just haven't worked on Windows enough in order to actually know that off the top of my head. So the formatting of the field itself, as we're going to see when we go into layout mode, is based on the style that you apply to the field. These are all the different style options. First, the field has its own style. So in this case, we can always see this in the inspector By having the field selected, going to the third area, which is the Appearance tab right here, and then everything that's in this third tab area of the inspector really is the styling of the field. Primarily when it comes to the font, we're seeing that right here in terms of the text. So this field, as I resize this so we can see it on screen just above my head there, obviously, the font is whatever I have selected. So if I change to American Typewriter, then American Typewriter, and if I change it to the 14 point, that's what it's going to be. Now, here's a little tip. The fonts that you find on the current machine, you have to make sure that they're going to be on all of the other machines. Now, there are standard fonts that are available on whatever platform you're working on, Mac or Windows. If you'd like to know what those fonts are, I find this really helpful. Let's take a quick trip over to Wikipedia. And when we look at Wikipedia, we can put in default Windows fonts or something like that, and it should come up. Or list of. Wikipedia always uses list of. List of. That's a good thing to search for. There we go. List of typefaces included with Microsoft Windows. So when we click on this, this is really nice in terms of a reference to know what fonts you can use. Now, they have this nice little first version that font was used on Windows. So we got 98, Windows 10, so forth. Windows 7 these days, as of the recording of this video, is a good font to stick with. And I can show you a trick of how to get those onto your Macintosh if you're working on a Mac, and if you're working on Windows, how you can get fonts from the Macintosh over on Windows. Now you can do the same thing for Macintosh. List of fonts on Macintosh or Mac OS X. And there we go, we get the exact same type of list where we can see all of the different fonts that are actually available. Now this is really helpful to know when you're designing your database. So this is the first aspect in terms of the style of the actual field itself. Now the field, whenever you put new text into that field, if you're just typing in FileMaker, then obviously you get that styling. If I just had nothing in this field and I start to type, this is the style that is applied. Now, actually, there is no styling applied to the data in this field currently. The data is basically using the styling of the field to represent how it's going to look. But if I select any one given piece of text or all of the text in this field and I do apply a style, then that means that FileMaker stored with this field now on this record, it will have additional pieces of information, which is the styling. And that's what happened when we copied from the web browser and we pasted it into FileMaker. Now we always have access to our little styling by using this little option right here. Clicking on that, that's going to bring up our style bar where we can actually apply just to what I have selected to change the styling here to 36 on this. Now, the reason that we want to know about this is that FileMaker has the ability to do overrides on fields when it comes to styling, and it comes in the form of conditional formatting. Conditional formatting will take over. It's the final say in terms of what's going to be shown within a field, no matter what is styled. Now, here what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a different type of styling. Let's say on this particular item, I will make it bold. Now, the distinction here is that FileMaker, when it stores this additional data, is stored that this particular word applied has a different font size. Whereas this one has not a different font size, but a different styling, whether it's bold, italics, or underline. Now, the distinction here is when we apply conditional formatting to this, what we're going to see is that FileMaker will override or can take over certain settings. We're going to do that by going into layout mode, Command or Control L, and on most every object in FileMaker, you can apply conditional formatting. I believe it applies to fields, text blocks, buttons, and we would just have to see. It's all a matter of you just right click and then you choose this option right here of conditional formatting. Now this is the same thing that you have within spreadsheets, where you can conditionally format a column or a given cell in order for it to look however you want. So when I bring up the conditional formatting and we zoom out here, conditional formatting allows me, as the final say, to override what's actually going to happen. So if I add a new conditional formatting here, I can choose any type of condition that I want. FileMaker has these pre-constructed conditions of where the value in this field is not equal to, less than, so forth, etc. What I want you to recognize is that FileMaker uses its own calculation engine behind the scenes, so this is pretty cool to know. Watch this. If I say that the value must be equal to in this field, or let's say containing, this is a good one, value in this field is containing, and let's say applied is a word that I actually put in. And what I want it to do is I want to give it a particular text color, let's say. And I'm going to say I want it to be blue. And I say OK. Now we get this little indication right here that the conditional formatting is actually on this field. And when we go back into browse mode, you can see that the color is being applied to all of it. So let's try to change the color of this particular font. Now this is a style. We're telling this one should be purple. Notice that styling, it actually overrides FileMaker's styling. So if you want to know, the order of styling is this. First, it's FileMaker's field, obviously, or whatever the field is set to be styled to. Then the final say that is applied via conditional formatting is in conditional formatting. Then you can, if a field is actually given an actual style, override conditional formatting. But from a programming standpoint, you aren't able to do this. You would have to have the user come in and make a selection and then actually change the color and override conditional formatting and have that be applied. But you can try the reverse. Let's actually try conditional formatting by adding a new style after the fact and see what happens. Let's see if we can get conditional formatting to override it. I don't think you can with conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is your programmatic way to override the styling, because most of the time the user is not going to go in and do what we've done, select a certain piece of text and then style it. We can add another one of these, and we can say if the value contains, I forget whatever I had, let's put the word and. We will apply a different text color, and that text color, let's say, is, let's go for an orange right there. And say okay. Now let's see what happens. Interesting. Do you notice what's happening here with this text? As I select in, you can see that the text that does have explicit styling to it is actually showing that when I select into the file, but when I select out, the conditional formatting is being applied to it because of the condition, but it's not overriding the explicit style that I have on the actual field. And also, when we look at that conditional formatting, is the word and in there? I don't have the word and in there, and that's why. Let's do it on the. All right, so go into that, right-click, conditional formatting, and we'll change it to the. And this one, what do you think will happen right now? Last rule wins. So when we go into browse mode, it's now all orange, meaning the blue is being overridden. So the way that this conditional formatting stuff works is that it works in terms of the last rule wins after conditional formatting is applied. So we go back to conditional formatting, and you can drag these around. So if I want a certain thing to happen, then I can have that happen first, and then I can have the next rule apply to that. Now, the whole reason that we're going through this, and the whole reason that I've expressed that conditional formatting is applied differently to different things, is because right now the example that I'm using text color in both of these situations. So if there were specific things that I wanted to have happen, and I have already formatted the data, giving it some explicit formatting, then the conditional formatting can enhance what I've done. Now, this all may seem confusing, but my whole goal is to get you to understand that the styling that is saved with the field, the styling that's applied specifically to parts of data, will persist, but then can be enhanced with the conditional formatting. So let's take the conditional formatting and let's actually say, instead of applying a text color with the, let's actually change something different. Let's say that if the word the is in there, let's make all of it bold, and then let's make the text color of applied take the actual blue. So now let's go into browse mode. So you can see that everything is bold. So what happens is I had some normal text that is originally a normal font size. It's not bolded. All of the text in the field is taking the style of the field, which is normal. Then conditional formatting is actually applying the bold. Then it's applying the color, but the color specifically applied to the text is being fixed. So let's see what happens if we select this word and we give it an explicit style. I don't know if it's, I don't see it up in the bar right here. There's a couple of additional styles that you get access to. You can see that we've got the font, we've got the different face, whether it's light, condensed, etc. We've got the size. And then we've got, that's highlight, I believe, bold, italics. I was looking for an additional setting, which would be of the styles of plain. Now you can see right here I have bold, italics, and underline. If you want additional styles, you can always right-click on whatever you have selected, and you're going to get additional styles available to you. So as I scroll off here a little bit more and move this up, and right-click, we can see that we get these styles where now I can actually say I want this plain, italics, etc., and so forth. So let's italicize this particular piece of text and go out. Now notice what happened there. This is important to note. The conditional formatting that we told FileMaker to apply, all of that bolding, is not applying to this first piece of text because it has that explicit styling applied. So if you know this, this is where you can do some really cool things in your user interface. And right now, what we're doing is we're working just with field data. And my whole point in showing you all of this styling information is the fact that we can do this same type of styling to data before it's actually shown in the user interface. So let's take a look at how we can do that. I'm going to take all of the styling off of this particular field. I'm going to do that here with the field. I can simply cut this to the clipboard. I can now paste it back in, and I can do that Command Z or that Control Z, and it'll rip all of the styling off of the particular field. But let's pretend that we wanted the field itself to be clean of any styling, just because, I don't know, we have that particular desire. So I'm going to paste that back in with the styling for right now, and we're going to go put something on the field, which is our auto enter. We've learned about this in a previous video. Go into browse mode, and we'll zoom out here, go into define database, and we're going to go put something on this field. Now, we learned this before, and it basically works like this. We go to we want FileMaker to use a calculated value. We're going to use the calculation dialog box. And what we want to do is we want to ensure that whatever comes into this field is exactly how we want it to be. So first off, we're going to be using self, which is anything that is in this field itself. Then next, we're going to be using FileMaker's text formatting functions, which we'll quickly zoom into over here. We can see that we have all of these different functions: text color, text font, font remove, everything that we've seen in the bar that we can actually apply using FileMaker's menus or the right-click menu or the little bar up at the top. Everything that we have there, we can set using functions. So we have full programmatic control in order to do whatever we want to data before it's actually displayed. So all this formatting stuff isn't just for users, it's for you in order to display data on the screen however you want to display it. So you're going to see what we're going to do is in the field we're going to store clean data, but what we're going to do is we're going to display it in whatever fashion we want. This is where I really like to drill into new FileMaker learners that how you store the data or how the data is put into the database, whether it's fractured or all in just one particular table, what you display of the data can be completely different. It's totally up to you. So in this case, I'm going to do a text format remove, and that's going to be of the self right there. Now, if you want to have just one line of data, meaning you want to ensure that a user never accidentally puts in a return on a field, which is the case for a lot of your fields, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. And I find that the easiest one that I've seen ever is to basically use getValue. Now, the getValue function is actually used to extract one value out of multiple. So if I have one, didn't want that expansion, the word one, and then two, with nice that, and then three. So getValue, if I was to say, what's my list of values, and my list of values were these, and I said I want value number 2, it would grab this string of 2. Really pretty simple. But in this case, we're sort of using it in a way that it isn't that. We're not wanting a value out of multiple values. We're just saying, if the user put in a return character, if they did put multiple values, we only want the first one. We want the first line. So we're going to rip off the rest of whatever the user put in there. So we're going to paste in what I had there, and we're going to say value number 1. So first off, we're taking what are the contents of this field. Then we're going to strip off any formatting that's in that field. Then we only want the top value itself. Now, again, if on that top value, let's say that the user had spaces, or they put the first name with an extra return after they had put a space. Well, there's one more function that you can use that you can put on this, is you can actually trim this. So we can cut this to our clipboard. We can type in trim, so that will rip off any spaces, and we can paste that in, and we've got a pretty good auto-enter calculation for a clean data field now. So we are going to choose the option and uncheck that because we want FileMaker to basically rip all the styling off of the field cleanly. We've learned about the styling and how it works, and we're going to use the styling in order to get exactly what we want for the purpose of display, but for the purpose of storage, we're going to store the data clean. So I'm going to cut this to the clipboard, which on the clipboard it has all of the styling, and I'm now going to paste that back in. This is as if it was copied from a web browser or from some other Mac application, or if on Windows, any other application where styling is captured. And as soon as I click out of this field, the auto-enter calculation is going to work for me, and it's going to take it off of the field. Now, I do have some styling on this. Do you know why? Because of conditional formatting. Remember, we turned conditional formatting on. That was the override that overrides the styling that's on the field itself. So let's turn those off. Right-click, choose conditional formatting, and we will zoom in and just uncheck these. I don't have to delete them. If I uncheck them, FileMaker is not going to make the effort, but I still have them there if I want them. So we say OK, and we now go into browse mode. All right, so I have in this field stored just clean data with no styling. What happens now when I want to present this data, let's say in the user interface, and I want to do it with styling? This is where we get into using those merge fields. So if I go up to the insert menu and I go to this option right here to insert a merge field, or remember the key of Command Option M, I'm able to basically select any field that I want in terms of display. So the data in the field is now clean, and I could use conditional formatting directly on the field itself. But as well, I can basically display the data on the screen using a merge field. Now, this is what I explain to all new FileMaker learners. It's a rule of thumb that I use in all of my database systems. If the user is going to be able to modify the data, then I will expose the field. If the user is only going to be able to see the data, then I will use a merge field. And here's the reason why. When I go in as a developer, it becomes very obvious in terms of a clear distinction that users can control and edit this one, users can only view this data. And where would this come into play? If I'm developing a mobile solution, then I'm typically going to use a merge field for the purpose of display, because most of the time on mobile, a user has to explicitly click edit in order to actually do something. That's a good way to go with your database systems, but a lot of the sample files and a lot of FileMaker files that you'll see, developers will just put the fields right on the layout because that's what FileMaker does. So that's what all the other databases that I see. It's not typically good UI. You always want to think, what's the frequency that the user needs to edit this data versus actually just see it and view it. So in that scenario, maybe we would throw in a popover like this, or that's actually just going to be a regular button. Let's get a real popover here by holding on that, then getting a popover, and then actually displaying the data. Let's just use the little pencil icon that's somewhere in here. There we go. We'll just click that pencil icon right there. We'll throw the edit field in the popover. And I think it didn't go in the popover because it was larger than the boundaries of the popover. Let's show that popover again. Get rid of our mess. Maybe I can do this with zoomed in so we can see a little bit better. Now it's contained within the popover, and we can make the popover itself a little bit smaller. Like so. So this is my typical approach to data. So I now have what type of styling control over this text field? Well, I have conditional formatting. But if I wanted to take advantage of what I've shown you here in terms of being able to use the explicit styling to data, then I'm going to be able to need to advance this to using something like a variable. So I could turn this into a global variable in terms of display, and I can take advantage of the fact that I now know as a new FileMaker learner that there's two different styles here. There's conditional formatting that can act as a style override, but that conditional formatting can't work with specific pieces of information or areas within that text. So this is the key takeaway of this video. If you recognize that you can apply explicit formatting to the data and use conditional formatting, you get the advantage of being able to really take full control over the display of data. So watch this. I'm going to put in a double $sign, and I'm going to call this display text, or display.text. It's just one of the ways that I name things. Display.text. So this field now, I need to get the data into this global variable for the purpose of display. So I'm going to have to do that somehow. And pretty much anywhere where you have access to FileMaker's calculation engine, you can do it. I could do it on a script trigger when this data is actually edited. I could do it when I leave this field. I can do it when this particular record is going to display, and I can sort of take a cheater way and use FileMaker's calculation, hide calculation, because I know that the hide actually evaluates before FileMaker is going to render anything on the screen. That's usually my preferred method. I can also use it on conditional formatting itself. So in this case, that's what we're going to do because it's sort of a convenient place to actually do this. So watch, this is, you can consider this advanced development, but I'm showing you this in a way, hopefully, that it makes sense. Because really all we're doing here is we're going to take the contents of the field, whatever the user had typed in, we're going to push it into a global variable, we're going to apply some explicit formatting, then we're going to use FileMaker's conditional formatting as an override. So let's do that on this particular piece of text. On this text, we're going to zoom in. I'm going to right-click and choose conditional formatting. Let's get to that dialog box so that we can see what's going on. Now remember when I showed you earlier in this video that if you choose one of FileMaker's options of containing, if value count, if, I don't know, has the word horse, whatever you're looking for. Here's what's interesting. Watch what happens when I make a selection here and go from value containing horse and just choose now formula. Look at what FileMaker actually did. FileMaker's own use of the value is behind the scenes actually using FileMaker's own calculations. It's using its own functions in order to take what you've input. So if you want to learn from FileMaker, just do this. Value is between 100 and 500. Okay, let's switch this to formula. Oh, okay, that's what FileMaker's calculation engine would look like. Self is greater than or equal to 100, and self is less than or equal to 500. So just switch between that, and it's pretty cool to see that FileMaker uses its own functions in order to do that. So let's do pattern count again of horse, and we'll switch it now to the formula. FileMaker did the calculation for me. I like to have spaces in here. Just makes it a little bit easier to read. Actually interesting, as a Boolean, we don't need this greater than here. As long as pattern count returns anything other than 0, meaning it does find something, then we're going to be able to actually have that evaluate. So here's the cheater stuff. Here's where, as a new FileMaker learner, we're doing something a little bit more advanced. We're going to click the specify, and we're going to back this off, and we're going to take advantage of the very first function that I suggested that all FileMaker learners learn, the let function. So we are going to say this. What are we displaying on the layout? Well, on the layout, we are displaying that display.text variable. So we have to create that. So we're going to say let display, because that's what we are displaying, .text be equal to, and now this is where we need to actually reference the field, and we're going to use FileMaker's text formatting functions. A little bit, you can see we're taking this path where we're going down to this advanced level, but hey, you're going to know how to do this stuff now. I'm going to hit a return right here, and I'm going to take the text, and I'm now going to apply some explicit formatting. I'm actually going to do it on the first word just because that's the easiest for me to come up with in terms of a calculation, doing this live on screen here. I'm going to, having put the field on, cut that, and I'm going to say I want to use FileMaker's, let's apply a text color, because text color is fun to learn and know about. What I'm going to do is, what am I going to apply a text color to? Well, I already know that I'm going to use the field, and I want the leftmost word. So I'm going to basically take the left word of that, so left words of whatever is input into the field. How many of those? Well, the first word. What do I need to actually join to this? Because if that's where I'm going to apply the text color, and I only work with the one word of left word, what happens to the rest of what is typed into the field? Well, it gets thrown away. We can't do that. We can't throw away the rest of it. So we need to add that stuff back. We're applying some formatting here. So I'm going to have to put an ampersand and concatenate to this the rest of those contents. So that we're going to actually have to use now middle words. So we're basically taking what we had as a whole, we're breaking off one little piece, but we need to keep the rest of what we had, and then we need to join them back together because we're applying styling to the first word, and we put them back together. Then we'll use conditional formatting as a final step. And trust me, this seems like it's complex and convoluted, but once you know that you can apply explicit styling to content, either directly to the content within the field or to the variable, your eyes are opened and you start to see all of these different ways that you can display data differently, as opposed to, just going with, minimally what you have. So let's get that word again, or that particular field. Now the starting word we need to start at is at word number 2. And how many words do we need to go? Here's where we get to just throw in some random long number like 99999. Now in this field, we already know that the field itself has an auto enter, which is only going to allow a single string of text because we're stripping all of it off with the auto enter calculation. So where does all of this go? Well, we're going to put this now back into our actual text color because that's what we're wanting to color. We're wanting to color this text. So I'm going to paste that in. And we've got this complex little thing right here of RGB. Well, I'm just going to throw in some random values here of 45, 76, and 87. I don't know what color that's going to be, but we're going to basically put all of that content in. Now we've got something that's looking like a monster calculation. And my suggestion is, I'm not going to take the time right now. In my other videos, I've taken the time to actually format this and make it easier to understand. I would take the time to do that myself in most situations, because coming back to this is going to be confusing, and I really don't want to be confused by my own code. So we've got let display text equal all of this gobbledygook. That is the first part of the let function. Now it needs an actual result. And remember, we're working in FileMaker's conditional formatting. So really, the only thing that matters in this calculation is this right here. We are going to apply what condition based on whether or not we find a horse, or horse as in the actual content. Because that's this is what we're truly looking for. We are looking for if within the self of this particular object, which happens to be the display variable, if we find the word horse, we're going to apply conditional formatting. Oh, as a byproduct, because this calculation is being evaluated right here, we're just taking the opportunity to set this particular value to have some stuff done to it. And in this case, the stuff is some styling. So hopefully doing this live, this will all work out. I say okay. Look at that. The calculation was actually accepted, which is really cool. We can see right here, this might be a little disconcerting right here, where we can see that this is here, but it's showing formula is blank. If you want to fix this, I'm going to click specify. I tend to put a comment at the beginning, or actually getting this on the first line, because FileMaker shows the first line when you've got this complex conditional formatting. Open the specify if you want to, and we say okay, and there we go. So when we see this, we actually get the specification here. So now let's actually apply our text color. And this is just, it's not too bad. I'm 36 minutes in, and you've probably learned some really good lessons here in terms of what's going on. When we go into browse mode, and we actually edit our text, so hopefully, remember the variable that's being used for display hasn't actually been set yet. And you'll find out if you create a new record, this isn't the most ideal. But again, we're learning FileMaker here as a lesson. Using the hide calculation would be better. Let's do it without the word horse. This horse is, this pig is cool. All right, so this got, I can see right there that I forgot, you can see, what did I forget? I forgot to add a space in my calculation. So what's happening here? What's happening is the sequence of this. The user types their data into the field. The field, even if it had styling on it, if this had pig and 14 point or 48 point, all of this styling is going to be ripped off using the auto enter calculation. But the conditional formatting that's on this particular text block being used for display is actually being applied when the contents of this field are being set into a temporary variable for the purpose of display. As soon as I exit, I can see that the styling was ripped off of the field, but the styling here is applied as an override. So remember, we were looking for that word of the horse. And this is all being done, again, because of FileMaker's calculation engine and the fact that we can set this variable to display whatever we want to display. Let's go edit that conditional formatting again. And let's add in our little value. Again, I'm going to make this a little bit easier for me to understand. I'm going to take the text color right here. This is why you do this. And I need to add in that space that's right back there. Because remember, we are actually grabbing just the middle words, and FileMaker ignores the space. So I've got the space back in here now, and we're saying display text. You're going to apply some text color. You're doing it to, I was supposed to do it just to the first one. And that's my problem right here. I'm actually applying it to all of it. So let's get this off. This might be a little bit more convoluted here. And then this is a good lesson. Getting exactly what you want. I'm doing this live, so it takes me a little bit of a time to figure out why is this not working the way that I want it to actually work. So I believe the best thing to do in this situation is to simply take off the text color and just make sure that I'm going to get exactly what I want. Make sure FileMaker will accept this. Let's see. There we go. FileMaker accepts it. So now I can go back into that calculation and say, what is it that I actually wanted to style? Well, in this case, I only wanted to style the front part, which was the left words. So now let's go fix that. And we'll put our left words. We'll get our text color. Now the text that I wanted to apply to is just the first word in this particular thing. Based on a pattern count of the word horse for that style. So this is going to be applied no matter what, and if the word horse is going to be included, additional styling will be applied. We need some values again here, 150, 6, I don't know, let's say 56, and then let's say 23. Who knows what color that's going to come out to be. And we click OK. I think what's going to happen now is I'm going to get what I want, as long as I modify this. Again, the hide calculation would be better. This horse is cool. All right, so now let's set our styling of our conditional formatting. I think we did that. Conditional formatting, text color of green. So we should be getting some green on this particular field. And we're getting a pattern count of self of horse is equal to, let's put back that 0, see if that actually works. I don't know, but this is fun. For some reason, that's what it wanted. So there you go. We just arrived at our result. I did it in 41 minutes. It took me a while, but hopefully the lesson here has been learned. With explicit styling, you can actually you have the ultimate say with explicit styling, but from a programmatic standpoint, conditional formatting will be the override to whatever the default styling is of the field. Final takeaway. Styling set to the object is first. The second override is conditional formatting. That's your final programmatic display control if you're just using FileMaker's conditional formatting. But your ultimate final say is any explicit formatting that has been programmatically applied to the actual data itself, meaning it's applied in terms of what's actually being shown, and it overrides conditional formatting itself, where a lot of the times you'll see that conditional formatting is basically taught to be its ultimate display. So what this means is that if you learn the virtual list technique, or if you learn how to display data, like you've learned in this video, you can really control however you want to display things. It is really the ultimate power that you have with those display functions. I'm going to leave you with one final thing in this video before we get to a few questions, and that's the one unique aspect that I like knowing about FileMaker. I'm going to go to my tools here and look at the data viewer, and we're going to learn something about the RGB function. We're going to go to the watch variable. We're going to click the plus here, and I'm going to go to those text formatting functions because I don't need to explain the rest of the functions to you. They're pretty much straightforward in terms of learning them. If you can read them, you can understand what they do. Text font does fonts. Text color does color. Size does size, and style does style. Pretty easy. I don't need to explain it, right? But the RGB is actually pretty interesting in terms of what it returns. So let's take a look at 156, 45, and 32. Notice that internally FileMaker actually returns an actual number. So if you wanted to use this number, I can copy this, and I don't necessarily have to have the RGB function integrated. So when we look at the text color remove, or the text color add, you can see that FileMaker is actually telling us, well, what's the RGB values that you want? Well, you don't have to have that. You can just put in the actual number. If you go in and look at what the RGB value is, it works just fine because behind the scenes, most of the time, everything we're doing is based on numbers. So if I go to my ultimate calculation right here, which I happen to be using conditional formatting, click on my specify, and I say, what is the color that I wanted? Everything that is the RGB right here can just be that numerical value for whatever I want. And if I size this out, I should get something that reads a little bit easier. And hopefully I didn't confuse you. Let a variable, global variable, be equal to what I want. What do I want? I want to break down my text, and I want to strip out words or extract certain words or color those certain words. How would I color all ands in a block of text? And this is why this is cool. Think about this. A user can type a bunch of text into a particular field, and then you want to give the user the ability to, in a separate field, actually type in the word where, so that in that large block of text that they've typed into FileMaker, it highlights or counts how many different uses there are of where. There's 10 different instances of the word where, and you want to visually show the user all of the copies of the word where, and you want it to be purple with a highlight behind it. You can do that, and you can do that because of the information that I'm giving you right here. The function that you would use would be substitute. You want to substitute what? Out of a block of text, all my text, whatever field it's coming for, I want to search for the string of where. And what do I want to replace it with? I want to replace it with a text formatting function where I actually apply a text style. What is that style that I want to add? Well, one of the styles would be highlight. And you're able to do whatever you want to the text because of these styling functions as ultimate and final say in terms of overrides. And when you mix and match with conditional formatting, you get some really cool stuff. So this has been a long, complex video, went well over my 30 minutes, but hopefully you've enjoyed learning what we've got here. Let's take a look at our questions here, because I'm more than fine with going an hour. Heck, I've already spent this much time, so why not? And we'll switch over to my chat and see what type of questions we got that came in, if any came in. Pop up the chat there. Morning HBH group. Let's see. I used text color in Windows and works. Yes. All FileMaker's formatting functions will work on both platforms. The only thing that I'm mentioning is that on Macintosh in particular, because the clipboard shares a lot of commonalities between applications, when I copy this text, well, let me switch here. When I copy any of this text right here on the Macintosh, the styling is taken with this text on the clipboard, and that's just transferred into FileMaker, and that's because as part of the Macintosh operating system, it's much more integrated in terms of FileMaker as opposed to Windows. So on Windows, if you're looking at Internet Explorer or Chrome, when you highlight something from that application and go paste into a field, the styling probably will not be taken on Windows, where on the Mac it will. So that was my only point in actually conveying that. All right, switch back over to the chat and take a look at what we've got. I need to switch to Chrome there. All right, so we've got, hi there, back to learn. Excellent, Eric. Love merge fields, but wish you could search on them. Searching on fields, true. You cannot search on merge fields, but you can definitely choose to... there's a trick that you could do. You can have a field that is normally there, and then you can put object on top of it, which would be a display merge field, but then you're stacking objects, and that's going back to older days of FileMaker where we had to do those types of things. If you do want the field to be searchable using FileMaker's query by form, meaning you can go into find mode with Command or Control F, then yeah, you're better off using the actual field instead of just a display field. What is less overhead for FM applied to the auto enter or in the conditional formatting? If you're going to apply the text formatting, because yes, you can apply text formatting in the auto enter. You can apply text formatting you can't do it to the field contents itself directly using conditional formatting or the hide calculation. Pretty much only auto enter is where you can explicitly apply styling to the actual data itself, is in auto enter. But if you're using a display variable, something that you're just going to put on the layout and display whatever contents of the data that's in the field, then you can use the hide calculation, you can use the conditional formatting. Remember that the order is FileMaker has to determine what it's going to hide first before it's going to display anything. Then it's actually going to display the contents. Then it's going to apply its conditional formatting. And finally, any explicit data styling applied to the data overrides conditional formatting itself. And I think I answered that question from David. Let's see. Can we make blinking text or flashing text? The only way that you can make text blinking or flashing is to use a web viewer. It is possible to do blinking and flashing. It is possible to script flashing text. So actually, let me correct myself. You can't perpetually show flashing text, or there's no native setting within FileMaker where the text is actually just flashing, but you can flash something. The problem is in FileMaker, because it's not a process that is a native feature, if you're using a script in order to flash the text, then that means other scripts can't run, because the way that the script queue works is if the user clicks another button that's going to trigger a script to do something, and meanwhile you have a script that's constantly running just in order to flash things, then it really doesn't work that well. But we'll have to take a look at that in another video, the ability to actually display or flash text. I don't want to take too much time in this video, but it is possible. So thank you for the question. I think at 50 minutes, that's going to give us a wrap here. I don't see too many other questions coming in. So thank you, those of you that are in the chat, that you join this live broadcast as I record it. And as always, I'm going to tell you that you can subscribe here on YouTube. Let me switch to that because we're going to be heading out here. You can subscribe on YouTube using the little link right here. That'll get you notified using YouTube if you use the mobile app or what have you. The next video is going to come up here, and if you want more in-depth information, you're always welcome to go out and check out my website, FileMakerMagazine.com. More in-depth and all kinds of cool stuff for learning about FileMaker. So much luck, happy FileMaking, and see you later.